Hello, everyone. I always do this. I don't know why, but hello, and welcome to the Druid class version. And before we jump in, first things first, Druid has such a cool fundamental core feature of wild shape, being able to transform into other creatures. Really makes it so that your toolkit, your arsenal is very diverse and kind of lets you just have a lot of fun in, the various encounters and roleplay and everything that you could utilize it with. However, in 2014, the Druid is, besides the Wizard, I think the Wizard either might be tied or a little bit worse, but in terms of core class features, Druid is just so sad in terms of the 2014. It literally has, I think, 4, maybe, with a couple of random... I'm going to count them right here. It has 4. 4. It has Wild Shape. It has the ability score improvements, which I'm actually not counting. Timeless Body at 18th level. Beast Spells at 18th level. And then a 20th level feature of Arch Druid. That is it. That was the 2014 core Druid class features. And I will say, Wizards of the Coast, thankfully, in the Unearthed Arcana and in the 2024 version, have lifted it up a bit. But I also went through, I added some additional things to the core class, giving it a lot more of an identity. Because, I mean, Wild Shape is super awesome. And... it's a really kind of cool feature. There's a lot that you could do with this very, nature-based full caster, and so that's what I kind of did. I've taken, various things from both 2014, Unearthed Arcana, 2024, and myself, and I've now brought it all together to really give the Druid this kind of full, fleshed-out, rewarding, progressive, lots of fun kind of class to play here. So let's go ahead and jump into that. All right, so here we are. Whoop, hello. All right, so here we are. First things first, of course, you're going to have my Homebrew off to the side there. You're going to have the Unearthed Arcana PDF above me, and then, of course, I will have my 2014 Player's Handbook faithfully by my side, but we won't be using it a lot because, like I said, 4 features in the core class. And so, jumping in here, you, of course, have the table, Wild Shapes, Cantrips, Prepared Spells, and your spells slots, and then your features, etc., etc. Okay, so hit points are going to be the same. Proficiencies are going to be, I believe, for the most part, unchanged. And so, continuing along here, the Herbalism Kit, Light Armor, Shield, Simple Weapons. The equipment is going to be the same as the equipment in the Unearthed Arcana. I like that kind of style of doing it, so that's going to be the same lineup there. And, of course, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, Level 1 is going to be spell casting here. I'm not going to read all of that. If you want to read it, go ahead and do so and pause the video. I'll go and slowly scroll on. Here we go. If you need it. There you go. There you go. All right, moving on to Druidic. So, Druidic, level 1. You know Druidic, the secret language of druids. As an action, you can use Druidic to leave a hidden message on a surface or object. The message can be a brief sentence or symbol. You and any creature who knows Druidic automatically spot such a message. A creature that doesn't know Druidic can spot the message's presence with a successful DC 15 investigation check, but can't decipher it without the use of an identify spell or similar magic. You can remove any Druidic message you have left by using an action to swipe your hand over it and dismiss the magic. That is going to be, for the most part, similar to the 2014. I just added a lot more kind of specifications to mine, just specifying what it can be, and then kind of whether to be able to identify it, and then of course what is required to dismiss it. It kind of follows in suit here with the Unearthed Arcana. However, the Unearthed Arcana gave you the ability to always have the Speak with Animal spell prepared. I removed that, and I will go ahead and explain here in a bit. But I removed that, but essentially, I just kind of took both the Unearthed Arcana, the 2014, and then I just smashed them together and added some more clarification to certain things. Because I think Druidic could be really cool. It's kind of like Thieves' Cant in a way. But I just want to make sure that there was a little bit more depth to it, so that way people could actually, know how to use it and, whatnot. So, moving on to Primal Order. This is going to be similar to the Cleric's Divine Order. This is going to be an additional kind of thing that the WotC has added, though I have adjusted it to, in my own way, added my own kind of flavor to it. And so they had their Primal Order here, but I kind of switched it up renamed a couple things and then kind of added some additional kind of homebrew here. So, level 1, Primal Order. Additionally to your Druidic, you're brought up and dedicated yourself to one of the following circle roles of your choice. Circle being your Druid circle. Primal Caster, you dedicated your time to channeling and harnessing the primal magic of nature. You know 1 extra cantrip from the Druid spell list, and you can add your spellcasting ability modifier to any Druid cantrip's damage rolls, minimum of +1. The Knowledge Keeper. You've spent many hours of studying and learning about nature and the world around you so that you can be a guide to your circle and those beyond. You get a bonus to nature and history checks equal to your wisdom modifier. Minimum of +1. And then, of course, the Circle Warden. Trained for battle and to be the front line in protecting your circle. You gain proficiency in martial weapons and medium armor. So kind of similar to Cleric, you have these 3 options that you can actually now kind of fundamentally at the core class level kind of build out and have these different playstyles you have. So you can be a caster, you can just kind of be this kind of sage-like character with the Knowledge Keeper, or you can be a frontliner, kind of almost battle druid of sorts, which is super cool. And so a lot of good things at level 1. Level 2, this is going to be an additional feature that the UA has added, which is really cool. It's going to be the Wild Companion. You can summon a nature spirit that assumes an animal form to aid you. As an action, you can cast the Find Familiar spell without expending a spell slot. When you cast the spell in this way, the casting timer is reduced to 10 minutes and does not require material components. The Familiar is a Fey and only disappears if it is dismissed or drops to 0 hit points. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. I added some to that in terms of some specifications. I wanted it to be, kind of feel more than just, oh, hey, this feature is a spell, essentially. I added a couple different things of how instead of it being an hour for the Find Familiar spell, it is now 10 minutes, and a couple different things that are adjusted there. So, just wanted to specify things in that way. Level 2, Wild Shape. So, actually, Wizard of the Coast has gone through and revised how Wild Shape works. Wild Shape before was like 10 paragraphs, a whole bunch of stuff, explaining a lot of things. And so, they've adjusted a couple things. And so, let's go ahead and read through that. And I've kept for the most part a lot of the adjustments that the UA has that the UA kind of describes. However, I then kind of added a couple different things in which I will explain. So, the power of nature infuses you, allowing you to assume the form of an animal. As a bonus action, you transform into a beast form that you've learned for this feature. You stay in that form for a number of hours equal to half your druid level, round down, or until you use Wild Shape again, have the incapacitated condition, or die. You can also leave the form early as a bonus action. Known forms. You start knowing 3 forms for this feature, chosen from among beast stat blocks that have a maximum challenge rating of 1/4 and that lack a swim or fly speed. Rather than choosing, you may start with the riding horse, spider, and wolf. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can place one of your known forms with another eligible form. When you gain certain druid levels, you learn additional forms, and the maximum challenge rating for your forms increases as shown in the beast shapes table. In addition, starting at 4th level, you can adopt a form that has a swim speed, and at 8th level, you can adopt a form that has a fly speed. Here's the table there, outlining everything. Number of uses. You can use Wild Shape twice. You gain 1 expended use when you finish a short rest, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. You gain additional uses when you reach certain druid levels, as shown in the Wild Shape column of the druid table. Rules while transformed. While in the form, you retain your personality, memories, and ability to speak. And the ability to speak is a big one. You can speak. And the following rules apply. Game statistics. Your game statistics are replaced by the statistics of the beast, but you retain your hit points, hit dice, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores. Class features, racial traits, basically everything. Besides physical differences. You also retain your skills and saving throw proficiencies and use your proficiency bonus for them, in addition to gaining those of the creature. If the creature has the same proficiency as you and the bonus in its stat block is higher than yours, use the creature's bonus instead of yours. If the creature has any legendary or layer actions, you can't use them. No spell casting. You basically cannot cast spells, but if you have concentration on a spell before you switch into it, you can keep that. Objects. Your ability to handle objects is determined by the form's limbs rather than your own. In addition, you choose whether your equipment falls to the ground or merges into your new form or is worn by it. Worn equipment functions as normal, but the DM decides whether it is practical for the new form to wear a piece of equipment based on the creature's size and shape. Your equipment doesn't change size or shape to match the new form, and any equipment that the new form can't wear must either fall on the ground or merge with it. Equipment that merges with the form has no effect until you leave the form. Alright, so a couple awesome changes here is the fact that you can now speak. I believe it is actually, before it was an action. You can use your action. Yes, it's now a bonus action to do this. You do not need to be a Circle of the Moon to be able to do it as a bonus action. So that's clear across the board is nice. Big change also is that there's an amount of known forms. Known forms is a really good balancing adjustment to this feature, because now you can't just open up the monsters manual and choose anything you want. You now have to kind of predetermine what you want. You can add them to your list, and then that way it kind of helps the DMs kind of understand what the Druid can do and not have to plan every encounter around infinite wild shapes or whatever it is. It kind of helps it helps the DM a bit in terms of just being able to prepare for certain things. And it also helps the player be able to kind of confine this in a way to where it's like, you don't have to like think across the entire scope of the animal kingdom to figure out what you can turn into. It kind of helps keep that list a little bit more drawn back. So I like that. And I believe... Yes, so they did remove the swim speed restriction in the UA. They just made it so fly speed is the only thing. I added swim speed back in just so that it kind of feels a little bit more progressive. I kind of like that, how you can't, you kind of have some limitations and they broaden as you go out. And then additionally, I actually made it so that at 12th level you get 2 more forms. So instead of it capping out at 5, actually I increased them across the board. So they have it 3, goodness, right here. 3, 4, 5. I have it 3, 4, 6, and 8. So that way you still have a kind of a wide list, but it's not, never ending. And then of course you have the rest of the other things as well. So, and then what they've been adding to a lot of these core features that have a resource pool, they've been making it so you can regain at least 1 on a short rest. That's the same for this, just like the Cleric's Channel Divinity and the Bard's Inspiration for Druid. You do get your Wild Shape at least 1 use back on a short rest. Super cool. I like the adjustments to Wild Shape. I know there's a back and forth a bit about like, there's a set stat block for the creature you turn into, whether it's land, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of extra information there and kind of the other changes. But I like that they reverted it back to the fact that you can just choose an actual creature and you take that stat block, but there's some adjustments. So, yeah. Moving on. Let's continue on. Now, that is only level 2. Moving forward, Druid subclass is going to be at 2nd level as well. That is the same as 2014. For some reason, Wizards of the Coast wanted to across the board make everything at 3rd level. I think certain classes should get their subclass at different levels. I think that makes more sense role-playing wise for that to be the case. Like Cleric should get it at 1st level, which I've reverted that back to. Check out the Cleric video. But for this one, I've reverted it from 3rd to back to 2nd because I do think that it just makes a little bit more sense. So, we're there. 3rd level, Primal Awareness. You can focus your awareness through the interconnections of nature. You learn additional spells when you reach certain levels in this class if you don't already know them. These spells don't count against the number of Druid spells you know, and you can cast each of these spells once without expending a spell slot. Once you cast a spell in this way, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So, this is the big reason why I got rid of the being able to speak to creatures with Druidic. Because I wanted to, I added in the Primal Awareness. Now, Primal Awareness is from Tasha's, and it was actually for the Ranger class, though I was a little surprised because it would make way more sense to have it in the Druid, because the Druid obviously is a full nature-based caster, whereas the Ranger is a little bit of a half and half, and Nature's kind of a little bit of a secondary thing that they're kind of channeling from, whereas Druid is very, primary in their class. And so I embedded it here, I got rid of it out of the Ranger, and I think it fits well, and, I think it's a cool way for you to be able to get additional things that let you communicate and deal with nature and animals. And it progresses, of course, throughout the class, and so you get access to better spells as you go on. So, there's that. Level 4, Ability Score Improvement. You gain the Ability Score Improvement, of course. Level 5 is going to be Wild Resurgence. That was added in the UA here. Wild Resurgence, if you have no uses of Wild Shape left, you can give yourself 1 use by expending a spell slot. No action required. You can do so only once per turn. In addition, you can spend 1 use of Wild Shape, no action required, to give yourself a 1st level spell slot. And you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Very similar to the Bard, you kind of have this resources exchange that you can do. Super awesome. And yeah, I like that you can, if you say you're not really using wild shapes in these instances, or maybe you need a wild shape and you have extra spells, you can do this conversion, or vice versa. Super cool. Opens up the kind of opens up the floor for you to be able to kind of exchange things out and suit the needs that you have, or fill the needs that you have for various encounters. And so that's cool. Level 6 is going to be a subclass feature. Level 7 is going to be Elemental Fury, which they had added in the UA. However, I adjusted what it was, and I made it different. Elemental Fury. Yeah. Oh, yes. I made Elemental Fury a little bit different also because I put Potent Spellcasting I guess. I put potent spellcasting as the goodness gracious, primal caster feature. So I've been doing a couple of rearranging of various things, but Elemental Fury was a UA kind of idea, and then I just adjusted it a bit and added some flair to it. So level 7 is going to be Elemental Fury. The might of the elements flows through you. You gain one of the following options of your choice. Elemental Shift. If a spell deals cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, you can change the damage to a different type from that same list. It gives you a lot of versatility there. Elemental Strike. Once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack roll using a weapon or a beast form's attack in wild shape, you can cause the target to take an extra 1d8 either cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, which you choose after you have hit. Pretty good. So if you're a spellcaster, this really opens up the versatility of your spells. Say you're primarily using some cold spells, or you have a very good cold spell, but a creature's resistant to it or immune or whatever it is. You can adjust that, and you can add some kind of fun nature-bending RP kind of flavor to your spells, depending on. You can just, whether it's trying to push through a resistance or an immunity, you could also just flavor it differently. Instead of a fireball, it could be an ice ball or something along that lines. And so just a lot of fun that you can do with that. And then Elemental Strike, of course, is really good for those kind of frontline battle druids, giving them a little of a bump there to their frontline capabilities with additional damage, allowing them to be able to strike with weapons at a better or their beast form in a better capacity there. So kind of some good options between those two. Level 8 is going to be an ability score improvement, and also going to be a subclass feature, which, real quick, I am curious. Oh. So real quick, I just want to interject here. There is not a subclass feature at 8th level. That did not sound right, and so I will go ahead and delete that. There is not a subclass there. The next one is going to be at 10th level, and so I will delete that, and whenever you access the document through the link in the video description, it will be updated, so do not worry about that. But continuing on, level 9, Feral Senses. Your connection to the forces of nature has expanded your perception and discernment of the world around you, granting you dark vision with a range of 40 feet. If you already have dark vision from another feature or ability, Feral Senses adds 40 feet to that range. Additionally, you gain blind sight with a range of 20 feet. If you already have blind sight from another feature or ability, Feral Senses adds 20 feet to that range. Super cool ability that the ranger had, and I think it only kind of makes sense to add it over here. I really like the idea of how nature's kind of imbuing within your body, and it's kind of giving you almost this beast-like ability to just see in the dark or also sense things around you. Super awesome. It is not only in this class, Feral Senses, but it's also still in the Ranger. However, the Druid gets Feral Senses at an earlier level and also gets a better, kind of more heightened version in terms of its distancing. And so super cool there. Level 10 is going to be the actual subclass feature. Level 11 is going to be Bolster Transformation. The magic that you harness to utilize your wild shape has become stronger, bolstering your resilience while in your form. Whenever you assume a wild shape form, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to 2 times your Druid level. These temporary hit points are lost if you revert back to your normal form. If you've selected the Circle of the Moon subclass, you gain temporary hit points equal to the form's hit points, or 4 times, was previously 3, your Druid level, whichever is lower. Bolster Transformation I really like because one of the changes with Wild Shape, in order to kind of make the Druid a little bit less tanky and a little bit less of an HP just generating kind of sponge, they made it so that you retain your hit points when you're in a Wild Shape, which, to be fair, that's good in the sense of now if you're a rat or whatever it is, you don't have 1 hit point, you're not so easy to just to revert back to your normal form. However, it does make it so that if you're trying to play a bear or you're trying to play something a little bit more tanky, you no longer have that cushion between the temporary hit points and your actual main HP. But I like this because what it does is it gives all druids across the table temporary hit points. That way people don't feel like they have to play Circle of the Moon Druid all the time. They will at some point a little bit later, of course, in the back half, but that's when you start to really get some more powerful features. I like that it's giving all druids the ability to kind of have access to that, while also buffing Circle of the Moon. As I read here, you gain temporary hit points equal to either the form's hit points or 4 times your Druid level, and so it bolsters the Circle of the Moon. If you did decide to choose that subclass anyway, it makes it better. So it's not just circumventing that. Moving on, level 12, ability score improvement. Level 13, Primal Order improvement. So, the option you chose for the Primal Order feature has improved. Primal Caster, when you cast a Druid cantrip with a range of 10 feet or greater, the spell's range increases by 300 feet. That is going to be taken from the UA. Knowledge Keeper, you gain expertise. This is kind of building upon your selection here. Knowledge Keeper, you gain expertise in one skill of your choice that you have proficiency in. Additionally, if a creature within 15 feet of you makes a check in a skill that you have proficiency in, you can give them a d4 bonus to the roll. It must be given before the outcome of the roll is determined. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. A little bit of a kind of guidance of sorts. Circle Warden. When hit by a melee weapon attack, you can use your reaction to cause roots to spring forth from the ground around you. The creature must make a strength saving throw equal to your spell save DC, or take 3d6 bludgeoning damage and get pushed 10 feet away from you. On a success, the creature takes only half damage and is not pushed. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. So, just expanding upon your original selection, kind of, making you, whether you're a caster, whether you're just kind of this knowledge keeper, or kind of a frontline battle druid, you now have additional tools in your arsenal to, be able to utilize. So, level 14 is going to be a subclass feature. Level 15 is going to be improved Elemental Fury. So the option you chose for Elemental Fury previously grows more powerful. Elemental Potency, the spell deals cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, and now scores a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20, pushing that critical hit threshold down really good. And then, of course, Elemental Strike, the extra damage of your Elemental Strike increases to 2d8, which is the same as previously in the UA. So, yeah, just expanding upon those previous options, which is always good. Level 16 is going to be the ability score improvement. Of course, level 17, no class feature. To reiterate, all the half casters and primary casters, there is at least one level gap where there is no feature that is gained. I wanted to kind of create a little bit of a differential between marshals who get a feature for every single level and casters who have at least a little bit of a gap. Nothing insane either, because at 17th level, you're still gaining a higher proficiency bonus. You're getting another wild shape use, you're getting another spell, and you're getting access to your 9th level spells. So you're still gaining something through the class. It's just not an actual core feature. So moving on is going to be beast spells. While using wild shape, you can cast spells in beast form, except for any spell that has a material component with the cost specified or that consumes its material component. That is actually going to be the exact same as 2014 for the most part. And then it's the same as UA. So I think it's a really strong back half ability, and so go ahead and no need to fix what's not broken. Level 19, ability score improvement, and then level 20, one with nature. I took a handful of things from the UA 20th level here, and then I added I took all those, add a couple of my own. But yeah, before it was at 20th level, you can use your wild shape an unlimited number of times, which I'm sure, as everyone's kind of aware, that just made it, especially with the old wild shape, you can just endlessly generate hit points and become an infinite health point tank, essentially, as you change wild shapes. And so it's pretty insane. One of the kind of few actual really good capstone features in 2014. But let's go ahead and look at this one here. So level 20, one with nature. The power, wisdom, and vitality of nature constantly blooms within you, granting you the following benefits. Wisdom of the Ancients. Your wisdom score increases by 2, and its new maximum is 22. Final form. Whenever you roll initiative and have no use of wild shape, you regain 1 expended use. Heightened recovery. You regain all of your expended uses of wild shape when you finish a short rest. This feature can only be used once per long rest. While magic conversion, you can convert uses of wild shape into a spell slot, no action required. Choose a number of your unexpended uses of wild shape and convert them into a single spell slot, with each use contributing 2 spell levels. You must then finish a long rest before you can do so again. For example, if you convert 2 uses of wild shape, you produce a 4th level spell slot. And then of longevity, the primal magic that courses through your body causes you to age more slowly. For every 10 years that pass, your body ages only 1 year. So, Wisdom of the Ancients, of course, pushing that cap of the ability scores to 22 is super good, making you feel like you're kind of at that threshold. You've literally surpassed, the normal threshold of what most others could do. Super cool. Final form, giving you the ability to use a wild shape if you have none left in combat's always a good thing. Heightened recovery. I added heightened recovery into this because I thought it was a kind of a good way to kind of hint back towards the infinite wild shapes, but not so much that where it's kind of broken. This gives you the ability to have a lot of access to wild shape, but not infinite, you know, outside of a long rest. You do a short rest, you can get them all back. So I believe at 20th level, you get 4 wild shapes. You can get those back. And then going down even the wild magic conversion, now you can have this resource play too. So if say you're hurting on spells, you do a short rest, you get all your wild shapes back, but now you can, if you maybe aren't using those, you can burn some of those to get spells. And so there's a lot of things you can kind of do with the heightened recovery and wild magic conversion. And then of course the longevity I left in there from the UA, which actually the UA took longevity from the 18th level timeless body. That was the feature in the 2014, which I just said, but they took that and they added it onto the 20th level capstone, and I think it's just fun, cool RP, and so that is why I left it in there as well. I think it's just cool to have, you know, every once in a while, just, I mean, you know, it's fun just to have some abilities that don't necessarily do anything too crazy, but it kind of just gives you a little bit more of that kind of core class identity, and kind of just makes it so that you you gain something, and it just plays into the class a bit, but doesn't, you know, isn't game breaking or mechanically insane, but it's just fun to have. So, but yeah, that is it for Druid. I think the Druid's in a much better place here. You know, the Unearthed Arcana brought some things into play which are nice. You know, I had a couple of my own features, but then also tweaked some things, but ultimately brought it together so that you're, you know, there's a lot of features you're gaining throughout the class consistently. A lot of, you know, fun options now. Not only are you getting, you know, the primal order options, but you're also getting the elemental fury options. So there's a lot of builds you can kind of do and kind of variation you can have with building a Druid class. On top of all of this, you also still get a subclass, and so you're just getting access to a lot of things. And so if you like what you see here and you want to have access to this document, the link will be in the description of the video. I made this using the Homebrew, which is, if you don't know what that is a super cool website. Basically lets you build out documents in the same format as, you know, D&D source books. So super cool there. And if you have any feedback, any, you know, positive, constructive feedback, feel more than free to leave that in the comments as well. Definitely want to hear, you know, kind of what your thoughts are. If you have any, you know, cool adjustments or things that, you know, maybe you thought of as you were looking through and hearing these things. But yeah, that's ultimately all I got for the Druid. And so I guess I'll see you in the next video.